Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dig into a question that sounds super simple, but it's really not. What is a product? We're going to explore its true identity using a fascinating and honestly pretty powerful framework from a field you would never expect. So let's get right into it. So let's just put it right out there. What is a product, really? What is it at its absolute core? And the thing is, the answer you get totally depends on who you ask. And that's where all the confusion starts. You go ask an engineer, and they'll probably tell you a product is a set of functional requirements, right? It's a technical spec, a list of features that got to be built, tested, and shipped. For them, it's all about the nuts and bolts. Very logical, very concrete. Okay, but then you pop over to the marketing team. For them, the product is a collection of messages. It's about the brand, the positioning, the story you're telling the world to make people actually want this thing. They're speaking a completely different language. And an investor? Well, their perspective is from like 30,000 feet up. To them, the product is its ideal potential. It's a prospectus, a value prop, a line on a spreadsheet that screams future growth and a big return. The product is basically a financial asset. So here's the big question, right? Who's got it right? The engineer, the marketer, the investor? The truth is, they're all just describing one part of the elephant. And because everyone's got their own little piece of the puzzle, it's almost impossible to see the product for what it really is, in its totality. But what if there was a way to bring all these different views together? Well, it turns out the key to unlocking this whole thing comes from a super surprising place: the world of linguistics. Yeah, you heard that right, linguistics. Specifically from a theorist named Ferdinand de Saussure. So Saussure had this brilliant idea. He drew a line between langue and parole. Now, langue, think of that as the entire system of a language. It's the grammar, the vocabulary, all the rules that exist in our collective minds. It's the whole cookbook. Parole, on the other hand, is the actual stuff we say every day. It's the individual meal you make using that cookbook. The system versus the act. Now, here's where it gets really, really cool. We can take that exact idea and apply it to products. We can think of product langue as the deep-down core identity of a product, its true essence. And product speech is just what people say about that product in all these different situations, whether it's in a design meeting, a customer review online, or a big pitch to investors. So where does all this product speech actually happen? Well, it happens in what the source material calls a thematic space. And that just means any specific context or social situation where people are talking about the product. A brainstorming session, a development sprint, a Reddit thread. Each space is its own little world with its own rules and its own way of talking. All right, so to really get a handle on all these different conversations, we can actually group them into 5 distinct types of product speech. And this is awesome because it helps us map out who's talking, where they are, and what they're really trying to do. It's pretty simple, actually. First, you've got toward us. That's conversations aimed at the company, like when customers give feedback. Then there's only us, which is all your internal, behind-the-scenes talk. With us is when you're working with outside partners, like investors. Without us is the Wild West, all the public chatter on social media that you can't control. And finally, not us, which is when you're talking about your competitors. Let's see them in action. Okay, so to really see this framework come to life, let's go on a little journey. We're going to follow a product's entire life cycle and watch how its core identity, its langue, gets expressed through all these different types of speech as it goes from just a tiny idea to maybe a cultural icon. We can break this whole journey down into 3 big phases. First up is the idea phase. This is all about discovering the need. Then we move into the build phase, where we start making it real. And finally, the public life phase, when we release it out into the world and it kind of takes on a life of its own. So let's kick things off with the idea phase. This is where you have toward-us conversations with potential users during consumer research. Right now, the product doesn't even exist, but through this speech, it takes its very first form, an insight. Then you take that insight internally, have some only us chats, and that insight gets molded into a strategy. Now we're in the build phase, and this is almost all only us speech. Your designers take that strategy and turn it into a prototype. Then, the developers translate that prototype into a solid set of requirements. And at the same time, marketers are busy crafting the messages to tell the world about it. See how the product is literally changing its shape based on who's talking about it? Okay, now things get really interesting. We're in the public life phase, and we start having with-us conversations. We're bringing outsiders into the loop, During a public beta, your early adopters give you crucial signals on what to fix. When you're fundraising, your product becomes a compelling value proposition for investors. And if you go for an IPO, it transforms again into an idealized prospect. And this is the final and maybe most powerful stage. This is where you completely lose control. And without a speech, your product is now being defined by everyone else. Public discussions create buzz. Reviewers write reports that shape opinions. And if you're really lucky, or maybe unlucky, your product becomes something more. It becomes a cultural symbol. So, wow. After that whole journey, going through all those different conversations and spaces, we can finally pull back the camera and see the whole picture at last. We can put all those scattered pieces together into one unified view. The thing is, your product was never just one thing, was it? Looking back, it was a potential product during research, a possible product in a prototype, a marketable product in an ad, and eventually a publicized product in a review, and an imagined product out there in the culture. It wears so many different hats. Which, brings us right back to where we started. The source material says it perfectly. What's a product? It's not easy to answer this question. And we see now that it's not easy because we've been trying to find one single simple answer, and a single answer just doesn't exist. So here it is. This is the key takeaway. The real identity of your product, it's product lang. It isn't in any one of those conversations. It's the total landscape created by all of them put together. It's the sum of the insight and the requirements and the messages and the buzz and the cultural symbol. That is the whole unified identity of your product. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Instead of just asking what your product is, maybe a much more powerful question is this. How many different languages does your product speak? And are you actually listening to all of them?